Good morning, everybody. It's Tony here with Rebel Financial. Thanks for joining us again. Today we have a great guest here from Columbus, Ryan McManus of Share. And so thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great. So here's how I thought we would start. I want you just to give a snapshot of what you guys do before we get into some other things I want to ask you.
Great.
So what do you guys do?
So Share, we are a microtransit company. We've built a proprietary software platform that allows us to operate highly efficient, scheduled mobility as a service. We work with employers, senior living communities, schools, and healthcare providers to help them solve transportation problems, which is typically one of the number one issues that people in their communities have in getting there. Mm-hmm. And so our model is that we operate a fleet of vans with professional drivers, and all the rides are booked in advance so that we can be hyper efficient and serve riders with 1/15 the number of vehicles that would be needed if everybody was driving themselves.
Okay. And let me distinguish too, because we talked about this in advance compared to doing it on the spot, right? I mean, so what's the issue there?
Well, we live in an on-demand world today, and your personal car sits in your driveway so that it can be on demand, and you use it about 5% of the time. Ride-hailing services are there in your app when you need it, but they're kind of the emergency room of mobility, where it's very expensive relatively to use, and you couldn't use it every single day. And by getting individuals to schedule their transportation in advance, what we're able to do is coordinate all of that need. And in a city like Columbus that doesn't have 6 million people all going to work at the same time, it lacks the density, and so you have to do that preparation in advance. And we see scheduling as essential to solving this transportation equity problem. How do you make equitable access to transportation actually happen? And we believe that it's going to be accomplished by getting groups of people to schedule their rides in advance, having the private sector subsidize those rides. And by doing that, we can bring the right transportation into any neighborhood at any time. And if we get to a world of autonomous vehicles and everything still operates on demand, that gap in access to transportation is only going to widen.
Yeah, right. Well, and the industry has a term, the last mile, right? I think what most people have access to their own vehicle, right? But the folks that don't have it, they don't realize you've got this main artery maybe of bus routes and things like that, but it's not obviously getting close enough to everywhere. So you guys have to come in there and help with that as well. I mean, that's a large part of what you do, right?
I think that's one of the biggest problems we're solving right now is that last mile issue. For some, that's a really long mile, and for some, it's pretty short. One of the exciting things we're doing here in Columbus, in partnership with the City of Dublin and CODA, as well as employers in Dublin, is we pick up and drop off at the CODA stops that end at the city line in Dublin, and we bring the employees who schedule their ride to the employer. The City of Dublin is supporting that last mile ride, and they're able to get a very low cost ride on CODA to get a majority of the way. Okay. But without that last mile service, they may find themselves walking or unable to get to work.
Okay. All right, so I wanted to put that framework of what you guys do, but let's come back before that. You've started a couple things. Talk about starting this business and what led to do it.
Yeah, so my journey as an entrepreneur has been pretty planned and purposeful. So I'm not a inventor type entrepreneur. I'm a problem-solving entrepreneur. And so in 2014, I was able to start my first company. My partner, Wah, we started it together, but she kept her full-time job at Ohio State, so I could leave my career and start this new business. And what we did at that company was we focused on helping other entrepreneurs go from idea to first customer and building that process for innovation from idea through validation to building an MVP product. The experience that we built, that we developed through that company allowed us to be ready when the opportunity to pitch an idea to Jaguar Land Rover presented itself in May of 2016.
Okay, and so what happened with that then?
It was a really unique opportunity. A friend of mine, we went to Ohio Dominican together, and he calls me up on a Wednesday and says, there's an opportunity, you should pitch an idea to Jaguar Land Rover. They have this incubator out in Portland. And so I spent a day building up this concept around, we had this vision for technology for a world where everyone is a passenger, and we thought that meant autonomous vehicles, and we wanted to build apps and in-vehicle experiences for the future self-driving cars. And that got Jaguar Land Rover to provide a concept investment. We then incorporated the company, picked up our life, and moved out to Portland, Oregon. And it was a 6-month journey of finding our way to an opportunity that solved a real problem, and we could build that business back here in Columbus, Ohio. While we loved Portland, we didn't find the same startup community that was developing here, and we knew we wanted to come back to Columbus to build this company. It was just a few months after that incubator that we ended up pivoting to become Share. And so we went from this apps for autonomous vehicles company to a platform for mobility as a service. Yeah. And through validation, ideation, validation, and MVP, we learned that what the market really wanted was not a better software package to operate transportation. It was to have private organizations be able to get out of transportation altogether, but still solve the transportation need they have. Okay. So that's why we had to get vans and start actually operating the service if we wanted to really build this company.
So you make another point, you came from Oregon here because of the opportunity, and I don't think people realize here in our little bubble how the startup opportunities that we've had and the technology. I mean, we are a smart city, right?
Yep.
That's a technical name. And by the way, you guys have been named one of Central Ohio's 50 smartest companies, so congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was quite an honor last night.
So let me, as you did this then, I always like to know about the nature of just starting the business. Looking back, what was the biggest surprise you had, or one of them, in starting a business? What like, wow, how did I not think of this kind of moment did you have?
Well,
anything like that? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, it's a great question.
People start businesses and they think they thought everything through, but then you realize, obviously, something's got to make you pivot because you hadn't
right.
thought of it.
Well, one of our investors, Rich Langdale, said to me one time. He said, the only commonality between the unicorn companies is that they pivoted, and we learned to embrace that pivot and change based on new information. So the way that we approached this was that we were obsessed with the problem, not what we had created, and that allowed us to make changes when we hit roadblocks that we knew we couldn't get around. And by also focusing on the team, we built a group of investors that backed us, not just the idea. Mm-hmm. So they believed in the team, they believed in our vision and where we were going, but they believed in us enough to accept when we came in and said we need to do something different, because if we don't, we're going to go out of business anyway. Right. And so we started out by trying to build this media company, and what I didn't appreciate when we did that was what I actually had to create if I wanted to be that. If we wanted to be a video app to go into cars, I had to become YouTube, and that was far away from the experience I had. It was a much better fit for me, with my experience, to build a software as a service company and something that was going to be B2B.
Yeah. I've seen, because what you said was really profound in the fact that a lot of entrepreneurs come from a very specific background or idea, and they're going to try to forge ahead with that, no matter what roadblocks or problems come up, as opposed to, like you said, having the flexibility to solve the problem, and if you have to pivot to be able to do that, because that is what ultimately will kill companies if they don't pivot to the public or to the problem and come up with it. So
totally.
And that's what people have to understand. If you're starting a business, you better be able to accept that.
Well, think about passion, right? Passion is such a big part of entrepreneurship, and what I've found is that passion comes second after you find a good business. And if it comes first, you can end up making a lot of wrong decisions because of that passion. You can maybe it's like an environmental problem that you're really, really passionate about, and you can have blinders as an entrepreneur because of that passion. So what we had to do with this business is find the real business opportunity first, and then get really passionate about solving the problem that we could address. And now, Wah and I couldn't be more passionate about solving the transportation problems in our cities. It's a huge problem. There's a ton of satisfaction from knowing that 1,000 people today are getting to a job, education, or healthcare in this city because of share.
Yeah. It's really needed, especially like you said, that there's just a lot of people that don't have the transportation themselves. So
we have to exist. I mean, it's essential that we get individuals to change their behavior to schedule transportation in advance. I tell our investors that we have to exist in this world, and we improve the communities that we serve.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when do you think, we're in back half of 2019, when can you envision your company having an autonomous vehicle?
Well, I think that within the next 18 months, we could have one out on the road. We have multiple autonomous vehicle manufacturers that we've partnered with, and it's really just about finding the right use case, location, and funder. There's still a bit of a novelty. The use cases for autonomous vehicles aren't there. The environments for autonomous vehicles to operate aren't there. And the technology kind of is, but the laws are not yet ready. So what we see as happening much sooner is ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. So before we get to level 5 autonomy, I see level 2 and 3 features being added to our van fleet. How do you start helping and aiding drivers by making some decisions for them that ultimately make them safer? One of the reasons we're in a pole position to be able to do that is that we control our fleet. I control the hardware that's in that vehicle. I control the vehicle itself and who's commanding it. And so we have an unmatched amount of data about our operation. We will then be able to know what are the right places to be able to deploy an autonomous vehicle because it has the right rider types, the right consistency, and the right environment to operate.
Well, and Columbus is pretty progressive about that.
We are.
You're seeing help from the city in terms of not roadblocks at least, right?
Absolutely. I had the benefit of getting to be involved with Smart Columbus as their entrepreneur in residence in 2017, and the environment for change that's been created in this city because of the Smart City Grant win, is immense. There are businesses now paying for transportation benefits that 2 years ago had never heard of it.
So another aspect, this is a lot of disruptions coming. So let's just, a specific example that we talked about, auto insurance, and some hiccups now because, just to digress for a second, we've got these AI apps. We've got Root Insurance, but that's mainly for individuals. And I was talking to you about Beam, the dental insurance technology that I just learned about yesterday. So we really have a lot of that coming, and so eventually we're going to have to see that from. One example of the disruption would be the insurance and auto insurance.
Absolutely. I mean, both Root and Beam are great examples of companies using data to revolutionize the insurance process for their industries. We're looking at commercial auto, very different than what Root is doing. So we're looking at the needs for commercial auto to meet our business. And commercial auto companies are not ready to accept the amount of data and the real-time data that we have. And ultimately, insurance companies are going to have to shift and recognize that as much as 90% of their business over the next decade is going to become commercial auto and not consumer auto, as things go from individually owned to shared in these shared fleets. As we become passengers. Or even before that. I think data is one of the biggest reasons why you're going to start to see more and more car companies introduce subscription plans. So now they're bundling insurance They're bundling your monthly payment. Maybe they're even bundling in some type of maintenance. So it's just really easy. Why do they want to do that? Because they want all of your data.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What you as a company, so we talked about, the surprises. What are, as you run this company, what are the issues you're seeing today? I mean, to take you to the next level.
Yeah, so we've grown, we've added about 100 employees in the last year, and
so how many is that total?
About 115.
Yeah,
so between Columbus and Cleveland, a majority of that are drivers, but just learning how to be the right CEO as our company evolves and changes is a big part of my role now. Also, kind of continuing to look ahead as to where the market is going. I have to balance when I talk about this world of everyone as a passenger with the problems that we solve today. Because at the end of the day, what we're really doing is just helping somebody get to work.
Okay.
Now, how we do that is the really advanced piece.
Right.
But learning where to focus. This is the biggest company I've ever had the opportunity to run, and the amount of inbound opportunities that come to us from other cities and from companies every single day is immense. And being able to choose what's an opportunity versus what's a distraction is maybe the biggest part of my job right now.
Right. Okay. Well, you talk about those 100 people, so how many drivers do you have now?
About probably 75 or 80.
Yeah, and so you are, I don't want to say unique, but it's great to know that you guys they're W-2 employees, so they're really employees.
Yes.
And you have benefits and things like that. So what can they do if they have an interest in working with you, or what's the best way to
drivewithshare.com is where individuals can sign up to join. About 60% of our drivers are full-time, the rest are part-time, so it can be a great flexible part-time job for somebody. What we wanted to do was make sure that the drivers knew how important they were for our business. My partner always says that they're driving our business forward. They really are. You've seen the backlash as other companies go public from their drivers, feeling like they're left out.
Right.
And that one of the proposed ways to get profitable is to cut their pay even more.
Right.
And for the foreseeable future, even in a world of autonomous vehicles, the human element, today it's a driver, tomorrow it's a pilot. That person is going to be very, very important. And you have to trust that individual that's driving you today and commanding your self-driving car of tomorrow. And so we saw the need to build a company that took care of our people and made drivers a value add.
Okay. And that's, you pointed out, we didn't even say the company's names, but yeah, they have kind of pushed their employees to the side, which that is a bulk of their field, right? I mean, probably it's got to be 80-90+%.
We're building different businesses.
Yeah.
The ride-sharing companies are focused on the rider experience and getting people to ride. We're focused on the operations side of this, and how do you serve enterprise-level customers that have a different level of requirement, or healthcare customers that have federal payer and Medicaid requirements that those ride-sharing companies don't qualify for.
Well, listen, it's been great. So I appreciate you coming in.
This was fun. Thanks for having me.
As always, please subscribe to YouTube if you want to see these in the future, or see these, see some past ones that we've done. So, but Ryan, this has been great. So check it out. Either ride with Share or drive with Share if you're interested in working there. But this is where we're going as a city, really. I mean, as you said, 2030 could be that watershed time where 85% of people drive alone now, and that's where we're going to see some differences. So, but anyway, well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next week.